Welcome to the Relationships Inside Out podcast with Doctors Gregory Siebert and Kimberly Murray, licensed marriage and family therapists. Join them on this journey as they explore the ins and outs of relationships.
Well, welcome to Relationships Inside Out, where today we're going to talk about repairing in relationships, whether that's in a couple or romantic relationship with parents or children.
Repairing is a crucial part of any relationship, right? We're going to have ruptures. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to say that stupid thing we shouldn't have said. And what's important is, how do we move through that?
Yeah, I mean, and Dr. Dan Siegel says that it's one of the most essential parenting skills is repair. Because like you said, we're human, we're imperfect, we're going to snap, shit's going to happen.
Except me, but everyone else. I talk to every single couple and parent about this.
Yep.
Because often we aren't given the tools to repair, but then we're expected to know how to repair as adults. So this really starts with kids.
Yeah.
How do we as parents model that? Whether that is modeling conflict with my partner in front of my kids and then modeling resolution, or modeling when I might get a little grouchy with my kids every once in a while. How do I repair with them in that moment?
And it may vary depending on who the person is. If they're a child, they might not have the verbal skills or the wherewithal to even communicate what they might need. I mean, younger children tend to like physical touch, a little bit older, more words of affirmation and physical touch. And then teenagers is more like complex conversations, probably a little bit more in depth around that. But nonetheless, the whole point of that is we're not just allowing that rupture to go and nothing's said, and we're maintaining this power dynamic. There's a lot of pride in this process. And I think a lot of parents feel they give up control and power when they repair, when the reality is it's not about that.
It's not about you. If you made the mistake, it's not about you.
Get over yourself.
It's about, how do I fix the narrative that I've created? And some kids, like with my youngest, say my 3-year-old, I'll say, I'm sorry. And she'll go, it's okay, mommy. Right? For her, that repair process is important because it tells her we're moving forward and I'm showing her what to do. And so she'll do the same. If she hits her sister, she'll go up and say she's sorry. For my 6-year-old, albeit only a 3-year difference, my 6-year-old will have full conversations about, Mom, it really hurt me when, or I felt sad or mad or hurt when you yelled at me, or whatever it was that I did.
Yeah.
And it's important to acknowledge that they're both different, but that it's still important.
Yeah. And like you said, repair is important for development. And I mean, just imagine these 3 outcomes. So you have a parent and a child where they never have any ruptures. It's perfect. That child can never understand that the world does not track around them. Nothing bad will ever happen.
So their distress tolerance is incredibly low. Yeah.
And then you have the scenario where there's rupture, but no repair. The world is dangerous. I can't trust anyone. I'm not good enough or worthy. There's a lot of narratives that come out of that one. Or there's one where rupture happens and my primary attachment figure comes and says, I'm sorry. I know that hurts you.
And acknowledging what we're sorry for. It's not enough to be like, Harper, I'm sorry. Right? I have to say, Harper, I'm sorry that I yelled at you. And I'm not going to language of, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. And you did none of that business.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I yelled at you. I imagine that hurt you. I'm going to work on it in this way.
Yeah. And I think the first step in repair in general, in my opinion, I've seen some others out there that are a little different. Mine is you need to regulate yourself first.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not regulated, your repair attempt is probably not genuine. And more importantly, it's probably more about you feeling comfortable about the distress that's happening because of the rupture than it is coming back and acknowledging what happened to the other person or your child or whatever. So being able to regulate yourself, step aside, acknowledge, wow, even though that was not my intention, I can see how that hurt them. Let me go actually, and that's a really important part of this too. The next step is actually acknowledging the rupture. It doesn't matter if it's your intention or not. You don't have to defend that. Even if you did something that someone else wouldn't have been offended by, that's okay. It's for them. For some reason it did. And even be curious. Help me understand what happened for you when I said that, or when I didn't do this. It's not a time for you to air your grievances.
Or to defend.
Yeah, it's really, really important. So regulating yourself and then going into the
Mhm.
understanding. Because it's really hard when we're in our fight, flight, or freeze in defense mode
Oh yeah.
to have that higher order thinking of how could that have hurt them? Let me put myself in their shoes.
Empathy and running from a bear don't go together,
Yeah.
friends, because if they did, it would be, oh, I understand the bear is hungry and he's just pursuing his meal, which is me. We don't have time for that business. You are running from the bear.
Or they're scared because I was near their babies. I totally understand that.
I'm going to give them a hug. No, those two
Yeah.
parts of the brains are competing parts of the brain.
Yeah.
So we have to chill out, right? If I go into my daughter and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I've done nothing.
Yeah.
And if she says like, Mom, it really hurt me and I'm still pissed, I'm still worked up, I'm still whatever, I'm not going to listen to her. I'm not going to take that feedback in. When we go in for repair, we've got to calm our body. We've got to be grounded. So we're not on our phone. We're not distracting ourselves. And we've got to be ready to listen. We're not just in and out in 10 seconds. Maybe my daughter wants to talk for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I've got to give her room to do that.
Yeah. And in couples, I see, I'm sorry. Can we just get over this? Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just need
All
you.
the time.
I just need you to say sorry. I just need you. And I always ask, why do you need them to say it right now? Is that meaningful when they say it right now?
Mhm.
Well, we're going to go do X, Y, and Z. Doesn't matter. Why do you need them to say sorry now to regulate yourself?
Mhm.
It's really, really important that it's genuine and there's a conversation around it and there's true intention about being attending to the rupture.
And that you care. Or if I'm just going, okay, I'm sorry. Doesn't mean shit to anyone.
Yeah.
Right. And if I'm modeling that for my kids, they're going to do the same thing in their relationships. And so when they're married, it continues into their marriage, their kids, their family relationships.
Yeah.
We have to set the stage for what this looks like and practice it over and over and over again. And there are going to be times you mess it up. Let's be real. Even
my repairs have sucked.
even as therapists that have our doctorates in this stuff, I don't get it right every time.
Yeah.
Sometimes the humility is hard to swallow. I tell couples, sometimes you got to tuck tail. I struggle with tuck and tail sometimes, right?
Oh, there's times where I know my wife needs that repair and my defense is like, oh, hell no.
Right.
I'm not going to say it right now because I'm not feeling heard or validated myself.
Mm-hmm. Almost like a power move or a sense of control. Sure.
That's why the regulation is important. And I might not say it in the moment. I have to regulate. Like I'll breathe, take those 4-4-8 breath is what I typically do. No one really knows I'm doing it, but just breathe in, hold for 4, and then breathe out. But the important thing is, it's not about you in this moment. This is not a time, again, to air your grievances. This isn't, I'm sorry, but do you know how this made me feel? I hear that so many with couples. And it's like,
I'm sorry, but you didn't do the dishes.
Yeah.
Or you yelled first.
I'm sorry, but do you know what you said to me? Yes, I got upset and I yelled and I was not soft in my approach, but you called me an asshole. And granted, that might all be true. And the repair has to start somewhere. And I would hope, like in a couple relationship, both are repairing. Kids and parent, the adult, come on, you got to repair. The child, especially depending on their age, may not understand that earlier on. This is why we're modeling.
As we model, it gets easier.
Yeah.
Right. Like if Skylar, even at 3, if she hits her sister and we say like, Skylar, no, you cannot do that. Right. She knows to turn around and say, I'm sorry, Harper. And she gives her a hug or kisses it or whatever. Yeah.
But that language is really, really important. Not using the but. You can say, I'm sorry versus I'm sorry. I can see how that hurt you. You don't need to say anything else but sorry. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to give reasons. And
in fact, don't defend yourself or give reasons. Don't justify the bullshit.
And this isn't a time to then, again, I say this is my 3rd time saying this, I think, air your grievances. Okay, so now that I repaired, can you hear my side of the story? No. If you want that, then you need to approach that in an appropriate time, not when you're in conflict and need to repair.
Separate conversations.
Yes. Even though they might be related, you can only really attend to one. And if you're only focused on you, then it's all about you. And then the repair doesn't happen. The hard part about this is when you're in a dynamic, in a couple relationship where you would expect both adults to do this, is where it becomes unidirectional and only one partner is continually repairing. That's very hard.
It is. And that's a greater pattern that you have to attend to. Again, not in the moment I'm apologizing, but in a separate moment of, hey, hon, I'm noticing that I'm trying to heal. I'm trying to acknowledge when I've hurt you, and I would appreciate the same in return. Or, it's hurtful for me when you call me an asshole and then we never talk about it again.
Yeah, that's effective. What I typically hear is, you never apologize. I'm always the one who has to say sorry first. Yes, that may be true. That's not effective. And then to say that in a repair attempt, think about it later of, hey, we spent time repairing. I want to check in and see how you feel about that and where you're at. And I was hoping we can talk about some things that I feel like I need some repair with.
Here's the other part about repair. You heard me say at the beginning, I'm sorry, and I'm going to acknowledge your feelings. I'm sorry I hurt you when here's what I'm doing to work on it. You have to actually do the work.
Yeah.
So I'll hear people say, I'm not going to yell at you anymore. Please don't make that promise.
That's not realistic.
You will, right?
Yeah.
So instead, we're going to pivot to, I'm working on calming my body. Or if it's lying is another place where this shows up, right? Maybe you can say, I'm not going to lie about this thing again, but you've got to hold to it. Whatever you offer as the amends, stick to it. If you can't offer amends, if you can't offer next steps, get curious with your partner.
Explore.
What would be helpful for this dynamic in the future? How could I improve this as we move forward? How can I improve the way I speak to you? What do you need from me? These kinds of curious conversations help to then foster next steps so we don't keep stepping into the same pile of shit every time.
And don't expect perfection.
No.
It's the acknowledgement of it and the exploration of, hey, we talked about we're going to do better at repairing with each other, and we're going to say this language. We're going to do better at taking timeouts before we potentially create a rupture or after a rupture, instead of trying to resolve it right in the moment. Excuse me. Yeah. And I think when we talk about solutions, that it is realistic in the sense like you're talking about of, it's not realistic to say we're not going to rupture anymore. I'm not. The hard part is when, and like couples in particular, or even parents, is when it does continue and nothing changes.
Yeah.
Have a conversation about that. Maybe that's not the direction that our solution is.
Or we need to have more bridges to get to that solution. Maybe we need to go to therapy. Maybe we need to go to a retreat or a class or something to help give us the tools to actually get there. We can often know what the right quote unquote solution is, but maybe we don't have the steps or tools to get there to maintain it.
And the solution isn't, you need to start repairing more. You need to repair
I'll
with
stop
me.
yelling when you're less of an asshole.
When our solution is contingent or dependent upon the other person, we've now become hopeless in having any resolve, because we can't rely on other humans. That's not perfect. And if it's going to be dependent upon your partner repairing or your kid repairing back with you, you're probably going to be very dissatisfied.
Here's the beautiful part that often, not always, comes from repair. If I come to my partner and he's seething or whatever, and I say, Chris, I'm sorry. Sorry I yelled at you. I can see that hurt you. Can I give you a hug? Chances are, not always, chances are he's going to soften with me. He's still going to be a little bit pissed because he's allowed to be, and downregulating our nervous system takes some time. But it's going to help to soften his reaction to me. And that creates not just repair in that moment, but it starts to create a more long-term repair.
Wait, what do you mean? When I repair, my partner, or they should just immediately be okay and forgive me. They should
all the time.
They should not be upset.
Or kids, parents and kids. I said I'm sorry to you. What do you want from me?
This is very, very tough for people who need to solve it in the moment because they're uncomfortable with the stress tolerance.
Yeah.
Why should I give my partner space? And that neglects my needs. I need to resolve it right now. No, your need is based off of
anxiety, urgency, control.
Urgency, right? It's the same. So the goal is down regulation, but they're using their partner to down regulate, versus someone who needs space is using their space and using their own tools. Your down regulation is not contingent upon somebody else, because again, they might not be in a space to help you do that. And now you set yourself up for failure, in my opinion.
And by down regulating, we mean down regulating the nervous system. So calming ourselves, going into our parasympathetic nervous system.
Our calming ourselves should not be contingent upon what the other person does, says, or responds. We need to be able to do that ourselves.
And if you're the person, we call them pursuers. If you're the person that your partner says like, I need a minute or I need space, and you follow them, you got to back up first, friend. You got to give them room to process, or it's going to keep escalating over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So for you, it might be figuring out, what can I do in that 20 minutes that my partner needs to cool down, or hour? What am I going to do to soothe my body and to get my headspace right for when this conversation restarts, rather than keeping myself aroused and angry and in that sympathetic nervous system?
Or as you said in previous episode, we're not spending that time to sharpen our swords.
We don't sharpen our swords
in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
And the tough thing is now the person who's asking for distance, is avoidance your form of down regulation, or are you actually using the tools? Because because somebody who does naturally pursue and want to resolve it, and they do give space, that space can't be 4 days. It can't even be 2 days. And
same day repairs, unless it's at night and you're about to go to bed, I allow till the morning.
Yeah.
Because people sleep is an absolute function of, or necessary part of functioning well in repair. But solve it. Don't sit on it.
And we've talked about this in a previous episode, and this is a very important distinction. Repair does not mean solve. So repair is, I'm going to attend to you and show you that I love and respect you. Repair is showing love and respect for your partner.
And that I see you. And I see your lived experience. I see what I caused. I see my behavior.
Solving is, we need to find a solution for our perpetual conflict that we always have. Oh, I'm not going to feel better. That's not realistic. Repair is, we're allowed to have this perpetual conflict and I still love you. And how do you do that? I see the rupture that just happened, whether I intended to or not. I can apologize for it without trying to air my own grievances in the moment or have some caveat to it. And then we talked about how we can resolve this next time. How can we prevent this from happening? And that does not include, well, I think it'd be better and I wouldn't cause much rupture if you just weren't a piece of shit next time. This is why repair.
I hear it all the time.
This is why repair is so complex. This isn't just repairing. You just heard us talk about pursuer distancer. That plays a role in here because people have different ways of processing. And if your processing needs aren't met, it's going to hard to repair.
Our old attachments. This is why I talk about kids, because my kids, I am their attachment. I am their central figure. I am who they look to for safety, for guidance, for modeling. If I screw it up, they're going to be sitting in a therapist's office in 20 years. And so I've got to be really diligent about doing this well for them so that they don't have to sit with someone like me for the rest of their marriage, if they get married.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what's hard. Another piece of repair is, before I go back to my partner, is separating my behavior from myself, is acknowledging that, okay, I screwed up. My behavior, I talk about this even in infidelity, in lying, in just about anything. Your behavior is not you. You separate it, right? My behavior was bad. I screwed up. I messed up. I got mad. I got caught up in it, whatever. But I'm still a good and valuable person. So how do I first give myself some compassion so then I can breed compassion to the other?
Yeah.
Again, it's that softening breeds softening.
Yeah. And that's very important in that first step that I talked about, which is like regulate yourself. And part of that is giving yourself grace and compassion. Because a lot of times there might be things that you don't even intentionally do, but it's upset your partner from their own attachment anxiety, past trauma.
Sure.
We don't know. And I see a lot of self-blame, and it's hard to face that self-blame. So then we diffuse responsibility in our partner, and then it becomes a blame game. So that's really, a really good point. Another one to think about too is after you guys talk about what the solutions are, is making sure that you can still spend time connecting, and probably more time. They talk about with kids, it's really important to do what they call horizontal play, which is like get down on their level, play their games, have more conversations with them, and get away from that power dynamic. That power dynamic causes further hurt. We need to let go of that pride and literally just get down on their level and play and meet their needs there.
And that's true when we're also doing repair. It's eye level.
Yeah.
It's not towering over them. It is getting on their level, sitting on their bed, laying on the floor, even below them, so that they have what feels like physical power in that space too.
Yeah. You mean you don't want to stand over them and make sure that they know who's boss?
Think about Trunchable from Matilda, showing my age. But this is so important, right?
The connecting time is important. Because those build those times of positive sentiment, which we talked about, like those times where we can start seeing our partner in a positive light, despite our ruptures, despite our conflict, that we still care about each other and we still want to find time to connect with one another.
Another piece with repair, I have people say, like with apologies, is it for me or is it for them?
Yeah.
I have like a mixed perspective on this, and I'll be curious to see what you think. But apologies are for the other person, right? As it can create soothing. But them saying it's okay or I forgive you is not a necessary component of forgiveness, right? My self-forgiveness is not dependent upon the other person's forgiveness, right? And this is important on big repairs.
Mm-hmm.
If I say I'm sorry and someone's not ready to forgive, it doesn't mean I have to sit there and beat myself up until they give me that, until eternity. It doesn't mean I don't apologize in the future, right? I had a friend who asked, when working with their kids, my kids say sorry, but the other kid doesn't say anything back. What should they then do? You leave it. It's not on the job of the other to then say it's okay. It'd be lovely if that happened every time.
Yeah.
But it may not. What are your thoughts?
I mean, obviously the context will change, kids versus adults.
Sure.
Because there's situations that are perpetual and the partner is just tired of it continually happening. And how can that person be sorry when it continues to happen?
True.
So it may not be okay. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I like what you said. I think, again, we should not be contingent upon what the other person says to be able to self-soothe, forgive ourselves and give ourselves grace. Because we are human, we mess up. And, 70% of conflict in relationship is perpetual because of our personality differences. So you're going to have ruptures. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's tough. I mean, I think exploring what forgiveness really means and what is needed in that is really important.
Mm-hmm.
But in the process of repair, that's not a time to discuss it.
No.
It might be after of like, hey, when we repair, it is important. Like if I apologize, that there's some acknowledgement that you've heard that. Doesn't mean you have to be okay with it, but like, I hear you.
And teaching kids that.
Yeah.
So even with our oldest Harper, there's times that she gets picked on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's be honest, she gets picked on. And there was a friend who shoved her down and then said, I'm sorry, because the teacher basically told them to. And that person was like, aren't you going to say it's okay? It's not okay. She is not okay in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so teaching our kids to give room for when they say, I'm sorry, sometimes it may not be okay in that moment.
Yeah.
And creating that not only as the receiver, like I want to teach Harper when someone apologizes to say, I hear you, but she doesn't always have to say the phrase, it's okay, or I forgive you. I want to teach her that power. But also when she's the one who's apologizing regardless of condition. It doesn't matter what the other person is doing or saying in return.
Yeah. And I think about where somebody has to be to say okay and really mean it.
Yeah.
I mean, we just had a rupture. They still might be trying to downregulate or soothe themselves and not have the capacity to say okay. That sorry that was provided might be some sensory information that they needed to kind of speed up the process of self-soothing or help that process along. It may be okay. It might be all right for them to come back and say later they heard you and they received that and they appreciated it. And also let you know, like, I don't know if I felt that it was genuine because of this continually happens. And I want to talk about how we can prevent this from happening or what we need to do.
Repair is so complex.
This is one of the most
complex.
One of the most important skills because people will fight. You're gonna lose your shit on your kid. You're gonna snap.
Every parent, every person yells, melts down, has moments of anger, frustration. Everyone. If your friend tells you that it never happens to them, clue, they're lying. It happens across.
Distance yourself from that friend. Distance yourself from somebody who can't acknowledge that. Because guess what? That person's not going to repair with you.
No, and maybe they don't outwardly yell. Maybe it's them isolating, reclusing, being exclusionary, whatever. It doesn't matter. But we all make mistakes. Give yourself some grace in this.
Yeah.
So remember, good repair starts with self-regulating. Starts with me. How can I actually go in and mean it? How can I go in with active listening? Empathy. I can't actively listen and have empathy if I'm still running from the bear. I've got to calm myself down. I've got to give myself a little bit of grace, a little bit of compassion.
In this case, the bear might be the fear that your partner's going to leave you because you've just caused rupture. And so you're more worried about protecting that than actually attending.
Or even humility.
Yeah.
Humility can feel downright intolerable for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to give ourselves space, and then we're going to go in, and in whatever language, I'm sorry, not you. I'm sorry, I hurt you when I blank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Acknowledge what they felt because of what I did, and then offer either curiosity or some sort of next step to move forward.
And I think it's okay to even say, I'm sorry, it hurt you when. If you don't identify that you did it intentionally, it could still be helpful. It hurt you when this happened or when I did X. Yeah.
See, I'm on the opposite side. I think accountability is important here.
The thing is that I think it's true in certain cases, but there are certain cases where I've had couples where somebody's trauma came up and they needed their partner to repair. And that person, all they said was, I don't feel hurt in this relationship. There's nothing wrong with what they said. So they don't have to take accountability for doing anything wrong.
Fair. That's fair.
So I think in those cases, it can say, it hurt you when I talked about this and didn't provide, an example or talk to you about this before, and just kind of
that I can agree with.
Yeah.
Okay. Make me eat my words. Okay, Greg. Yeah. But remember, you're not going to get it right every time.
Yeah.
But if you have kids, if you have a partner, if you have family, which I imagine you have at least one of those, start now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait. It's never too late, but it's never too early. Start now. It is so important to create that lasting bond, and that bond that feels safe to mess up and create repair. We don't want to raise kids in perfectionism. If we don't want to raise kids in fear, if we don't want our kids to grow up to be little assholes, this is so important to start from the jump.
And in this kind of stage of apologizing and taking accountability, however that looks, this is where we get the urge to want to vent our side and be heard. It's not. Make sure you're not using this space to also talk about what's going on for you and why it hurts you. The goal is repairing with that person, your child, family member.
P.S. If you feel that urge, try writing it out before you go into the repair, so that your brain, there's psychologically something really powerful about journaling or writing. Mm-hmm. Our brain feels like it's still kept somewhere safe. We're not forgetting about it.
Externalized. Yeah.
So take it and put it on paper so you don't have to bring it into the room.
Yeah. It's almost like pulling it out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been Relationships Inside Out, where today we talked about repair, starting from little babes all the way up until we're old people, right? Yeah. It's important. As always, if you have any questions or topic suggestions, feel free to email us at relationshipsinsideout@gmail.com. Thanks.